Last week, Yaakov Meir brought up for Shaila. If you remember, we spoke about the Shem Hashem.
Rabbi, just water?
Just water, plain hot water, that's all. Thank you. You have in many Sidurim, to review what we did last week for a few minutes, when it says the Shem Hashem, you have two Yuds. You remember that? Two Yuds? Shkoyach. That's fine. Shkoyach. And Rabbi Yaakov Meir wanted to know what is the significance of the 2 years. We don't find in the Svarim any place where the 2 years are Shem Hashem. So why do the Sidurim have the 2 years? So the answer is, if you'll notice, under the first Yud, there is a Shva, 2 dots, like a colon. Under the second Yud, there's a Kamatz. A Kamatz. Why is that so? Obviously, if they have 2 separate Nekudos, that means they're there for a reason. Otherwise, you could just have 2 Yuds without any Nekuda at all. So the answer is, what we're going to take a look at right now, I asked you all to take a sheet. You'll have the sheet? Okay, let's take a look at the sheet. As aside from Hasidus and Kabbalah and all kinds of, there's certain things which you have to know the halacha. We're all going to learn it together now, a piece of the Shulchan Aruch and something in the Mishnah Berurah, which is vital for everybody, and we'll tie it into what we learned about the 2 Yuds last week. Let's take a look on the page in front of you. Everybody, the page in front of you. Sif Hey.
Gabriel, I'll need you to come back this way.
I'm coming, just a minute. Letting him pass me.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Please take a look at the page in front of you. Sif Hey. Siman Hey. It says Kavanas HaBrachas. You'll have that? Second paragraph, Kavanas HaBrachas. Okay, this is for everybody, no matter if you're Svardi, Ashkenazi, Litvak, Chassid, doesn't make a difference. This is the Shulchan Aruch Halacha. This is something you have to know. This is something that everybody uses and does who prays. This is one of the most common things that a person does. He's always mentioning God's name. In everything. You Baruch Atah and then you say Hashem, correct? Alright, now take a look at the Shulchan Aruch there. We have the Aleph. Yechavein bebirchaso peirosh hamilos. When a person makes a bracha, he should have, if he can understand it, the meaning of the words. Now that's in general. Now, listen to the next part. Kishiyazgir Hashem. When he mentions God's name, Yechavein Perush Kriaso. Think, Yechavein, Kavana, the meaning of what you are reading, not what you're seeing. What you're reading out loud, what you're saying, think of what you're saying. What are you saying? We're going to say it out here for the purpose of teaching. We're allowed to say the same. You're saying Adonai. Correct? So you're supposed to think of what those words, what that word means. What did you just say? So he says, Kriyaso ba'adnus shuhu Adon Hakol. He is the chief in charge of everything. He's the master. Adon Hakol. When you say the word Adonai in a bracha, you have to understand what that means. That means he is the master of all. Adon Hakol. He is the master. So you have to think of what you're saying. I'm saying Baruch Atah Adonai. Who am I talking to? The master of it all. That's what I'm saying. And that's what I have to think in my mind what I'm saying. Okay, next. V'yechavein, the second kavanah you have to have, biksivaso. You have to have also the kavanah of the letters that are on the page. Not what you said. You just had that kavanah. But you have to have immediately afterwards the kavanah of what you're reading. You're reading Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So you're saying one thing, you're saying master of the call Ado, but you're reading Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, which is another pronunciation altogether. If I pronounce the words on the page, I wouldn't say Ado, I would say, like the witnesses, the Jehovah Witnesses, that's what I would be saying, but when I say it with a Yud, but you're not allowed to say it. We say Ado because you're not allowed to say the shame as it's written, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. It's too holy, we're not allowed to say that name. So we say a substitute, Ado Noi, master of the call, but that's not what the words say. The words actually saying Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. The letters are Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So I have to have two kavanos when I'm saying God's name. The first kavanah I have to have is what I'm saying. I'm saying God, Adonai, master of all. Hadon HaKol. But then I have to also realize that I'm reading Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. And what does that mean? That is a contraction of Hoya, Hove, V'yir. God is infinite. He always was, He is, and always will be. That's what it looks like. Shahaya v'hove v'yeh. Look at the words in the Shulchan Aruch there. V'yechavim b'ksivaso v'yud hey. Shahaya v'hove v'yeh.
Can you ask something?
Yeah.
If when I say Adon, I have to have in mind he's the Melech. What is the difference, Adon and Melech?
It doesn't say Melech. It says Adon. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes a difference. Yaakov Meir says he doesn't think, he thinks the king. Okay, it's all the same. Now, the one who's in charge, the one who's running the show, the master, whatever you want to call him a king, call him a king. But the word is with Aleph Dalet Nun. So it's better to use that, master, than to use king. All right. So now we have, every time you say Hashem's name, every time, how many times do you say Hashem's name? How many times do you say bracha in the davening every single day? Hundreds of times. So you can't just say Baruch Atah Hashem. You have to think for a minute. Every time I say the Hashem's name, I have to think two kavanas: Adon HaKol and Hoya Hove V'yeh. Master of it all, and always was, is, and will be. Don't take a second or two to think. You can't. You see how people make a bracha? You see how people make a bracha? I have a yard site, like everybody else, my parents have a yard site. And there's a minhag in many shuls that people have a yard site, they bring what they call a tikkun, they bring some schnapps, a little bit of mezainis. After davening in the morning, people make a bracha. Oh, I'm making a bracha. I'm making a bracha because your father had a yard site, and I'm making a bracha, so your father is going to get schar because I'm making a bracha. So that's a minhag in many places, especially by the Hasidim. They do that, make a lot of brachas. I never bring anything to shul at my yard site. Never. Why not? You know why?
No.
You don't know? I'll tell you the secret.
People don't make them properly.
You hear that? Hear that? You got it. The people don't make the bracha. They don't think of the Shem Hashem. They just are interested. They're hungry after davening. They're interested in the food. They're not interested in the bracha. They don't say the bracha properly. They swallow Hashem's name as if it's not even there. You can't even hear it. So what am I accomplishing? For my father's yard site, I want to give him zchuyot. I want to have him have a higher aliyah neshama. So I make people make a bracha in his chos. But if the bracha they make is only going to do him damage, what am I going to bring the food for? So I stop bringing it. I don't bring it.
But you think it actually does damage?
Of course it does damage. They're saying L'Shem Hashem and they're not having kavanah.
What if there is
Terrible.
what if there's a few that are doing it correctly?
But I don't want to cause any
Would it be,
damage. I don't want to cause any damage. I don't want to cause any damage. I don't want to cause any damage. I don't cause them any tsar. I don't want to cause them any tsar. I don't want to cause any negative. I'm trying to do the best I can. What am I gaining in the people who are going to make the bracha and they're not having kavanah? They're not even thinking at all. They're only just in eating. That's an animalistic thing. A bracha is supposed to be a praise of Hashem. But if you're not even thinking of Hashem's name, all you're interested in is gobbling up the food. So what do you accomplish? You're just doing the opposite of what you want. You're doing damage to your father instead of doing him a taiva.
Some people wear tefillin and say the bracha in the same way, but they put tefillin.
I said, look, we say the Hashem's name hundreds of times a day in davening, shachris, mincha, ma'ariv. It's not only Shmon Esrei. Every bracha, every time you say Hashem's name, you have 57 times just in Shmon Esrei alone. There are 19 brachas, right? 19 brachas. You have at least one time Hashem's name is in the bracha. Some brachas have Hashem's name in the middle of the bracha too. But every time you say Hashem's name, it takes 2 seconds. Adon HaKol, Hoya Hovi, master of everything, and God is, was, and will be. I have to have that in my mind when I say Hashem's name. So now we go back to Rabbi Yaakov Meir's question. Why do you have 2 yuds? Why do you have 2 yuds? So the answer is the first yud with the shva is to remind us of the Shem Hashem as it's written, Yud Hey Vav Hey. The second yud has a komatz at the end to remind of how we say the Shem, Adonai, with a komatz O at the end. So the first one is for the written Shem Hashem, the yud with a colon. The second yud on the page is on the in the siddur. It's with the komatz to remind me of how I say it, Noi. That's why they're there. So those are put in there to remind us to think that. They wanted to save space and save for the printers, save space. Instead of writing out the whole shame, they write just 2 yuds and save space on the page. But they did it as a taiva. They didn't just stop do it. They did it with those nekudas underneath to remind us of what we're supposed to be thinking when we say the Shem Hashem.
Yeah, is this to connect the idea of what we see and what we hear?
What do you mean to connect the idea? You have to have both.
You're saying the first yud
You have to have both.
is sight, seeing, and the second one is based more upon sound.
Pronunciation.
So connecting them.
Okay, fine. You want to connect them, fine. But you have to have both kavanas, both.
In the second explanation, you have the is, was, and shall be first. But in the first explanation, you gave it second. So which is does it matter? Does the order matter?
I would think it seems to be here, according to what the Shulchan Aruch says, first you should think Adon HaKol,
I don't recall.
and then Hayehovaviyah. That's what it says.
Okay.
So we give more importance to what we say over what we see. If we're saying something that we have to have in mind what we're saying, we shouldn't just talk like a monkey. We have to talk a human beings. When you say something, you should be thinking what you're saying.
So from the grammatical point of view, the witnesses, they say it rightly.
Except they use a J.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but then, all right, but they're goyim, so...
I noticed that when the name is written, that it has no vowels. I mean, a lot of times, in a lot of the sidders, it's just...
Yeah, sometimes they write the name out with no vowels, correct.
Right, and then...
Some places do put a vowel in, all right, yeah. Depends, in the Shmon Esrei, usually you will have vowels in each bracha, usually.
But now with the, when it's abbreviated, yud, so when it's adon, I've seen that word written, does it have the same meaning?
No, sometimes I write out Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud.
Yes.
But then it means only that.
So that's not for Hashem. That's a
That it also could be Hashem, but it's only that, not the Yud Hey Vav Hey.
All right.
You leave that out of the picture when that is there by itself.
I understand the Kamatz. I don't understand the Shva.
Because when you say the witnesses, it's J, so instead of a J, make it a Yud. It's a Yeho.
Yeah, but this is their shita.
No, but that's where they get it from. They got it from us. They got it from us. And they take the Yud and they made it into a J. But if they got it from us, it's
What is the meaning for the Shva? I understand.
Yeah.
Kamatz.
Yeah. It's Yeho. No. We the Nekudas is then Ho, then Va.
Yes.
Then Va.
I understand.
No, that's why it's a Shva, because it's a Ho, Va.
Okay.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
I was very specially careful. We were just talking about I made the bracha carefully. You see how I made the bracha? They want to be a hypocrite.
It wasn't because you were just thirsty.
I made the bracha carefully, yeah.
As I think about this, I realize that I have been guilty of just going through it many, many times without giving it proper thought. How does one do teshuva first? Haven't done that.
Just to do the tshuva and say, Hashem, look, let me tell you something. I've been davening. I had the schus. When I was 2 years old, my father took me to shul the first time. And I've been going to shul since then. And I've seen very great rabbis davening. I've always been around people who are davened. I went to yeshiva my whole life. I had friends who weren't religious, but I was in yeshiva all the time. And when I was 70 years old, I came onto the Baal Shem Tov's understanding of what davening is, which we're learning here. And I said to myself, my whole life that I'm davening, up until 70 years, I've been fooling myself. I thought I knew what davening is. I didn't know it all. I'm walking around in the darkness. Did not know what it is. So, in a sense, you're brought up like everybody else brought up. You do what everybody else does. And you can say, Hashem, I wasn't aware. It never really was explained to me. I didn't understand the meaning, the depth. I didn't do it right. The tshuva is to do it right from now on. That's the tshuva.
Right.
Thank you.
That's all. Okay. The next part, let's finish the last sentence. Yeah.
With all those, it takes forever to go through this one, that's right. It takes through.
I'm not talking about the Baal Shem Tov's kavanas. I'm not talking about Baal Shem Tov. I'm talking about the regular way, the simple halacha. So you cannot finish Shmona Esrei in 3 minutes. You just can't do it. You can't do it. It takes longer. So it takes longer. So you'll miss Kedusha, whatever it is. Don't think about anybody else. When you're talking to God, keep talking to God and don't think about anything else. You have now a special opportunity, a privilege. Every single day, God is willing to, the master of the universe, creator of the universe, has death and life in his hands of the entire world. He gives you the opportunity to speak to him. Would you not take that and make it the most important part of your day? And a special audience with the God, a special audience, and he listens to me. So you're going to speak, you finish it off in 2 minutes? I mean, I think the person is, you have so much there, it's such an opportunity, such a privilege, you would want to keep it on as long as you can. You want to prolong it. I have such an opportunity to stand in front of God and listen to me. Wow, how can I just do that like this? I've got to give it, the proper attention. I have to really have the kavanah like you're supposed to, and with the proper respect, and dress properly, and prepare myself for this opportunity. This is the way you go about tefillah.
Unfortunately, it's impossible. Most of the minions that I've been to, they speed through it, especially in the morning. They just want to.
So we've said many times, come a few minutes earlier. Come a few minutes earlier and make sure you space it and time it so that you start the Shmona Esrei with everybody. Then you have Tefillah B'Tzibur, and after you start with them, forget about the rest of the world. That's what you wanted to do. You time it so that you can start off with everybody else, but once you get into it,
But you don't finish with everybody else.
that's right. Exactly. Exactly. Forget. That's what I'm saying. Once you start with them, forget about them.
Is it never too long? I mean, everybody finishes and leave, if you're still there, that's fine, you can.
That's fine. That's fine. As long as it takes you. As long as it takes you. And don't think about Kedusha or Kriyas Torah or Birchas Kohanim. Forget it all. You're now talking to God. Just think for a moment if it actually, in real life, I mean, God is not something which is physical, so you can't do it in real life. But it is taking place in real life. It's taking place, but you can't visualize it because God is much too high. But it's happening. He's listening to every word. And just think of it as if it was a person who was physical. And you're having an audience with him, and he is so awesome. He's so awesome that once you go into the room, like you're in another world. Would you care about what's going on outside? You would be so focused. You'd maybe be trembling with awe. I mean, I don't know what would be feeling. Everybody different. But it would be so binding to you that you would be totally unaware and not caring at all of what's going on outside. I've been working to get to this point, I'm preparing myself to speak to the Creator. And now that I have the opportunity, I'm going to let all these stuyot on the outside disturb me?
No.
How do I care about them?
Okay, everybody's left. You're there by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You still say Taknu, everything, just like you know?
Yes.
Everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
What if you have to say Kaddish or something?
Kaddish, you need a minyan. Kaddish, you can't stop. Kaddish, you have to have a minyan.
So if you're in the middle of Shmona Esrei and they're saying Kaddish, you stop the Shmona Esrei for a second and say Kaddish?
If you hear it. If you're davening properly, you shouldn't even hear it. You're so into it, you're not aware of what's going on. But if you hear it, if you hear Kedusha, so you're supposed to daven, stop davening, stop saying any words, and listen, and have kavanah. But don't say anything. In the middle of Shmona Esrei, you cannot speak. Even for Kedusha or for anything. Kaddish, nothing. You just listen. There's a big machlokes in the poskim what to do. So some say, just go on. Just go on. You're not allowed to disturb your davening. And some say, no, how can you just go on? So they came to a sort of a compromise and say, you stop, but you don't say anything. Just listen. It's a compromise. Some hold you're not even supposed to stop. Just go on. How can you stop when you're talking to God? But because of the other shita, they say, okay, we'll make a compromise. Stop, but don't say a word. That's it. Yeah.
After we say the Shem Hashem, then we're saying Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. Seems like we just had that meaning in mind.
No. Well, let's look at the next.
We're going there.
Next. All right. Okay. So that's Hashem. That's Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei.
Yeah.
Then the Shulchan Aruch says Elokim. B'Haskiro Elokim. The end of the second line there.
Yeah.
Yechaven shehu takif bal hayacholes bal hakochos kula. When you say the word Elokim with a hey, there's another kavanah. Because you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu or Elokim, right? That has a different meaning. Yud Kei Vav Kei has its meaning. There were two meanings for Yud Kei Vav Kei. Adon Hakol Haya Hove V'Yiyeh. Elokim as another. What does the killer mean? Hu takif, he's powerful. Bal Yacholes, almighty. Ubal HaKochos Kula, master of all energies in the world. So here you have something to make it even longer. It takes longer. Because you're saying not Elokim, you say Elokeinu. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu. Right, so if you say Elokeinu, and any time you say a bracha, it could be in davening, it could be when you're eating something, any time you say a bracha, Birchas Hamazon, whatever it is, Bar Priya Eitz, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei pri shakol nibra. So you're saying Hashem's name, Elokim. Elokim and Elokeinu is the same. Don't get confused. Elokim means the object. Elokeinu means our God. That's all it means.
Why plural?
Because it's everybody.
If you are alone?
It's still, but you're part of Am Yisrael. You're part of the world. All right, so that's clear now. So we have now something that we have to remember. This is halacha. This is not Hasidus. This is, everyone has to have this in mind. Everybody. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah, go ahead.
What then is the, now, I'm illiterate in Hebrew, so a lot of times
Can you read?
I can make the sounds. I don't understand what it means.
Oh, but you can read the letters?
Yes. Okay. So now, what is the difference in the silent meditation versus the repetition?
Oh, you mean what the minion does?
Yeah.
What do you mean, what is the difference?
Well,
what's the purpose?
what's the purpose of the repetition?
All right. So it used to be the following way. At one time, there were no such things as sidurim. They didn't have printing presses. Everything was written handwritten.
I think the excuse me if I might mention it, but I think the repetition is for the people who have not davened, or that are in the rest of the world that should be davening, and so the repetition is for them.
Who they can't read?
Okay.
So, all right. So, I've heard what you've said. I'll just add something. At one time, there were no printing presses. So everyone who wanted to daven had to know it by heart. Who was the one who organized and gave us the davening? The Tanoim and the Nevi'im, Anshe Knesset Gedolah. Before they came along, who were they? By the way, we're coming up to them right very soon. Mordechai HaYehudi, he was the Gadol Hador, and I think he was the Rosh of the Anshe Knesset Gedolah in his time. They existed towards the end of the first Beis HaMikdash, through the second Beis HaMikdash, Anshe Knesset Gedolah, and after a while they just all of a sudden dissolved. There weren't any people who could be right for it anymore, so it just disbanded. And they decided that until now, people knew the language well enough so they could make up their own tefillah. But they saw that because of the galut, they saw because of people were just not on the level that they used to be, so they had to make up a formula that would be for all of Am Yisrael, and this became binding because it was like a Sanhedrin, and they said this is going to be the formula, everyone's going to use this, it will be a uniform davening for every person. So they all knew and they wrote it down, of course, at that time, and people had to learn it Baal Peh because they didn't have enough to go around for all the millions of Jews that were around. They didn't have enough. But not everybody was able to learn it. There were people who did not know how to read, they were illiterate, or they were unable to get to books. Whatever reason, not everybody knew it Baal Peh. So they instituted a Chazoras Hashatz, Shliach Tzibur. He will say it out loud, and everybody else will listen and answer Amen, and it's as if they have said it themselves. So we had, at that time, the first introduction of a Shliach Tzibur, who's going to represent everybody and bring up the tefillas for them. Came along the Mekubalim and said, yes, but there's another aspect. There's another aspect. When everybody does have a siddur, and they do, even though we had a takana, that we will try to include them by having a representative who will be the spokesman for everybody. He'll say it out loud. Everybody will answer Amen. It's as if they're saying it because they're going along with him, they're answering Amen, they're listening to what he says, and they're answering Amen. It's as if they said it too. But once everybody knows it, if everyone can read, what's the point? What do we need it for? Let's just stop the Shliach Tzibur. Everyone has a siddur. They're saying, but in any language they want, even if they say it in another language, it's still davening. Davening, you can daven in any language. What do you need a Shliach Tzibur for? What's the whole purpose? What's the purpose? So they said, it's very interesting. They said, there are two levels. There are two levels. We are davening not only for ourselves. That's not the reason why we daven it, only for ourselves, for our personal needs. It's a big mistake. People think, well, look at all the brachas. What we need refuah, we need parnasa, we need to have good judges, we need rain, this is all for us. It's a big mistake, very big mistake.
For all the Jewish people.
Huh?
It's for the whole Jew.
Even for the Jew, but for all the needs of the people, it's a big mistake. It's a very big mistake. Those are all secondary. The tefillas that we have, Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, are all substitutes for the korbanos that were in the Beis HaMikdash. The korban tamid was brought in the morning, korban tamid was brought in the afternoon, twice, and then the leftovers were burnt at night, which is the Ma'ariv. So we have Shachris, the korban tamid in the morning, Mincha, korban tamid in the afternoon, and the leftover, the fats, the inner parts of the animal which are sacrificed at night on the Mizbeach, that's Ma'ariv. That's what the tefillas are for, as a substitute for the korbanos. Now explain to me, what does this do? What do the korbanos do? The korbanos are there to make arrangements and fixtures in the spiritual world, in the Olam Yonim. There's a lot in the world that has to be corrected. Since Adam HaRishon sinned on the Eitz Hadas, since there was, before the world was created, there were all kinds of spiritual creations, other worlds, which were destroyed also. And the destruction of those spiritual worlds had leftovers that went into the physical world, and they have to be corrected. So that, plus what Adam HaRishon did, made a big mess. And the tefillas that we do, which go up to the heavens, and go up to the Olam Yonim, make those corrections, if we daven properly.
Kahanot.
And there, in the heavens, there are various levels. There's a lower level, and then there are higher levels. And the regular Shemona Esrei makes corrections in the lower levels. The Chazaras Hashatz with the Shliach Tzibur goes to a higher level. It's not just repetitive for those people who don't know how to daven. It's to make, like the Korbanos did, corrections and tikkunim in the Olam Yonim. So we may not know about it, but now you do know about it. And people think, well, it's just a minhag that we have, because once people didn't know how to daven, so we had to have a representative, so we keep up the minhag. It's not so. That's partly true, but that minhag was also based on this whole idea that you have to make the tikkunim in Olam Yonim to correct all those things that went on there when the Chet of the Adam HaRishon took place, and also what happened beforehand. There was all kinds of things that happened in the destructions of those worlds, also left over all kinds of remnants that had to be corrected. So our davening with the Shliach Tzibur a second time makes all those corrections, and on different levels. It's not just a ceremony which is carried on from before.
So just, this may be taking you too far afield. If not, you can tell me later. But so now in the era without the Beit HaMikdash, and we have spent all this time developing how to correct these ways. Is the korbanot going to be required ever again, or have we now learned how to go to transcend even higher than the korbanot?
Well, that's a big question. We, from our davening, it seems that there will be korbanot when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt. There will be kabbalah. The question is, what kind of kabbalos? That's a question which is nobody knows the answer to. There are different opinions. The Mekubalim, Rav Mordechai Sharabi, who was before, you've all heard of Rav Kaduri. You've all heard of Rav Kaduri, the great Kabbalist Rav Kaduri, who was nifter a number of years ago. Before him, there was a man named Rav Mordechai Sharabi, who lived here in Machne Yehuda. He had a yeshiva. His yeshiva is still there. He claimed that the only kabbalas we're going to have are the Ketores. That's all it's going to be. All the other ones are not going to be functional. Some say in the davening, if you look at the davening itself, it's mashma, we're going to bring kabbalas. We say it every single day. In the Korban Musaf on Shabbos and in Yontif, we're talking about we're going to bring the kabbalas. Hashem es havodel and v'vesecha v'ishe Yisrael. All the words in our davening indicate that we're going to have kabbalas again. The same kabbalas that we had then, when the Beis HaMikdash was, the Korban Tamid Shal Shachris, Tamid Shal Beinu Abayim. So who knows what's actually going to be? He says only the Ketores, he says the other kabbalah. I don't know. But we're doing right now a substitute for the kabbalas. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I was always taught you need to say amen and repetition each time I say Baruch. It's very important to say amen with him. But if I'm in my own world in this one, I can't say amen each time.
Of course not. You shouldn't even hear it. Ideally, you shouldn't even hear it.
All right,
But-
because I have it so much into my brain.
But even if you do hear it, you don't say anything. It's one Esrei
If you're in
only.
the middle of Mount Esra, you don't.
No, Chalila B'chas, nothing. No Yeheshmei Rabbah, no Kadosh, nothing. In Midrash Mount Esrei, you cannot interrupt your conversation with Hashem. Cannot interrupt it. Only thing you can do is be silent, that's all. Okay.
It causes, when people don't tell you correctly, then it causes you to have to, oh my gosh, if I have to say amen to them, I have to finish my prayers here so I can say amen with them. It creates a situation that...
No. You'll be completely confused. It'll mix you up.
Right.
You have to remember, when you start Shmona Esrei, that's what you're doing. And keep doing your thing, as we say today. Do your thing. That's it. Forget about the world. Forget about it. Okay. Let's take a look now at the Mishnah Berurah underneath. Small, I'll read it for you. I'm sure some of you won't have the ability to read it, so I'll read it. Doesn't make a difference. Look on the bottom right side, there's an aleph there. Pirush Hamilos. You see that? Yeah. Pirush Hamilos, the bottom right side. He's commenting now on the Shulchan Aruch that we just read. Pirush Hamilos, Kamosha Amru Chazal, in Brachos of Mem Zayin, Shelo Yizrok HaBracha Mipiv. Chazal tell us, the Gemara tells us, a person should not throw the bracha out of his mouth. El Yechavein Be'ez Ha'mira. He should have kavanah when he's saying the bracha. V'yevarech benachas. Say the bracha with, I should say benachas, slowly, and say it without a rush, as it's supposed to be said. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu. That's the way a bracha is supposed to be said. And the bracha is not said that way. That's why I don't bring the mezainis on the yard side. Kishehu notel yadav, when you're washing your hands, you make the bracha on the tilas yadayim, oshim bavarech ala peiros, or you make a bracha on fruit, or ala mitzvos, or on the bracha on mitzvah, you make a bracha every single morning, l'haniach tefillin, on the talish you make a bracha. Hashkur is b'fnei kol adam, these brachas are familiar to everybody. So he says, in the second column, yechaven libo l'shem boro. Have your mind that you're making the bracha for Hashem, for your Creator. Asher hifli chazdo imo, who is so wonderfully kind to you. Think how kind God is to you, v'nosen lo haperos, and you have this fruit. You go to other countries around us. Around us, they have no electricity, they have no water, there's food shortages. Go around us. See what's doing in Lebanon. See what's doing in all these places. They're in big mess, a big mess. And we have an abundance here, that you saw, Baruch Hashem. We're mamish millionaires compared to them. So you have to, it's such a wonder that we have. Go to Russia, see what's doing there. Think of the great kindness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bestowing upon us, how wondrous it is when you're making the bracha. And make the bracha with a lot of emotion and gratitude. V'nasan ha'peros or halechem lehanos mehem, and you're able to enjoy it. V'tzivo al mitzvos, and he also commanded you to do these mitzvahs. V'lo yaseh ka'adam oisad davar k'minhag. Don't do something as if it's the custom to do it, and I'm going through the actions. I'm on autopilot. Umotzi dvorav mipiv b'li hegyon halev, and he takes the words out of his mouth without any thought, any heart in it at all. And what does Hashem say when that happens? Be'aldava zeh chora af Hashem bi'amo. Hashem gets very upset, very angry when people do that. They're not showing appreciation. How do you feel when you do somebody a favor and you expect a thank you, which you shouldn't even expect, but you know he's going to give you thanks, and he comes over to you, he sticks his hands out, and he's looking someplace else. He says thank you, but he's looking someplace else. In other words, he doesn't really give any importance to what you did for him. He's just going through the motions of being polite.
People are very hard, very difficult.
You're very insulted, aren't you? Insulted? Aren't you insulted when somebody gives you a false thank you? It's insulting. You don't appreciate what I did for you? You know I went out of my way to help you out? And he comes over and says, oh, that was very nice of you. And it's a false smile on his face. You see that he doesn't mean it. You see that he doesn't mean it. You lose your cheshik. You could say to yourself, well, that's the last time I'm going to do him a favor.
It's better off he didn't say anything.
Yeah, well, so imagine Hashem, that's where average person, to Hashem, Hashem does everything, with the greatest chesed, with the greatest love for us. You can't show appreciation, be'emes, a real appreciation. We make the bracha, you're saying thank you, do it with your heart, and mean it. Mean what you say what you mean. Don't just throw it out of your mouth because you want to eat and that's it. You don't think about just going through the motions. Make the bracha slowly. Make the bracha slowly. And think about the words. Think about the Shem Hashem. Shem Hashem in the word. Think about the Shem Hashem.
What if you don't mean what you say?
What does that mean? You're supposed to mean what you say.
You mean not
If you
mean
don't.
what you say.
If you don't, next time do it better.
ואתה צדיק הכל בא עלינו. In this moment, חס ושלום.
All right, so say chatasi visi b'shaite. Next time do it better. That's all.
If you make kiddush on Shabbat Friday night with kavana, Hashem frees you from all your sins.
Okay.
Because you're being a witness. So, and a witness, if you have to be a witness, you have to be free of sin.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. All
What
right.
did he do? What didn't hear what you said, what?
Yeah.
When you make kiddush on Friday night, if you do it with kavana and with meaning, like he was saying, you're a witness. You're witnessing that Hashem created the world. So you have to be free of sin, otherwise you can't be a witness.
All right. I'm gonna comment on that comment.
That's why we stand.
You have to hear this. You have to hear this. It's very important. I learned something from one of my teachers many years ago, and it was just amazing. Just amazing. It's on a higher level, but I can explain it to everybody. There's a number of points here. We may go over the time. I hope you don't mind a couple of minutes because it's important. It's important. It's important. It's very important. It's halacha ramaisa. Okay. When you say at night, Friday night, you say it 3 times. You say it once in Ma'ariv, once in Kiddush, and then they go over it again in the Chazar of Sashatz. Vayichulu Hashemayim. So what are you saying? You're testifying, in a sense, you're making a statement that God finished the world in 6 days, and then he made Shabbos.
Okay.
They sanctified the day. Right? You're saying there that God created the world in 6 days, and He finished it, and then He made a Shabbos, and then Vayinafash, and He rested on Shabbos. So you are making a statement,
You're a witness.
which is like a witness, testifying that I am proclaiming that I know this and I believe this, and we are now in that Shabbos. Okay. It's not a real testimony. Your real testimony, you have to have a witness which is kosher. You can't say testimony together with a relative, can you? No. 2 relatives cannot be aided. You have to be people totally strangers. So if you're saying this Vayechul HaShamayim in shul, you have there, maybe your father is there, your son is there, your brother is there, and it's puzzled, it's invalidated. If you say testimony, Adis, with a relative, it's not an Adis. The court can't use it. It has no validity. So it's not a real testimony. Because if a real testimony, everybody who's related to you would have to leave the shul. So it's not a real, it's like a testimony.
There's other people in the shul otherwise.
I'm saying it's not real Adis. It has a tone of Adis. You're testifying, you're proclaiming something. That, yes, but it's not a real, they call it that, but it's not real Adis. Okay, now number 1. Next. The next thing is, when you come home from shul, Friday night, you walk into the house, the table is set, the candles are lit, and the house looks like a Shabbos house, right? It's all from covered Shabbos. The Malachim who escorted you home from shul
Witnesses.
give you a bracha. One of the brachas they give you is that you're going to get a kapara for your averos. Listen to this now. The malachim who escort you home from shul, says the Gemara, they give you a bracha, and the bracha is v'chatoscha techupar. Your chet, your averos will be forgiven. Now we know that our approach is, if you don't do tshuva, you cannot get a kapara. There's no such thing as a free ride when it comes to kapara. You have to do tshuva in order to get a kapara. So therefore, when you come home Friday night, before you start the kiddush, you have to have a machshava of doing tshuva. So every Friday night is a miniature Yom Kippur. Aside from the Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem you have to say to be respectful to the Malachim who escort you. But if you want to get that kapara, that the Malachim's bracha should take place on you, you have to have that machshava of tshuva before you start the Kiddush. In the Nusach of the Sfardim, the Eidos HaMizrach, it's in the Siddur. You're saying that you're doing tshuva before you say Kiddush. You're doing tshuva. Now, just get a hold of this now. This is an amazing thing. Amazing thing. This is what I learned from my Rebbe many, many years ago, and I was so beautiful, but it's so astounding. It says, the Malachim are escorting you home from shul Friday night. Imagine what that means. Imagine what that means. Let's say, for example, that you are being escorted Friday night by 2 of the greatest Rabbanim in this generation. Let's say you had on one side Rav Ovadia Yosef, Olav Shalom. On the other side you had Rav Moshe Feinstein. You just took the 2 names, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They're escorting you home, and you're in the middle, and they're on each side. These are your escorts walking home with you. What are you going to be saying when they're walking home with you? If you have any sense at all, you keep your mouth shut.
Right.
Let them talk.
Let them go.
Let them talk amongst themselves. You want to ask a shaila, ask a shaila. But are you going to open your mouth when you have these two giants walking home with you? Who are you to talk when you have such great people? That's two physical human beings. What happens if it's not two physical human beings who are great rabbis, but you have malachim from another realm altogether? They are so spiritual and so refined that anything that you do which is slightly off color, what's going to happen with them? They're just going to fly away. If you had these two great rabbis and you said something which was foolish, they would be looking at each other like, doesn't this person have any seichel? There's no derech eretz. What is he talking about? Why does he not have enough seichel to keep his mouth shut? Malachim are not going to tell you that. Malachim are just going to take off. Because you don't have enough seichel to keep your mouth shut and not when you see somebody, oh, how you doing? I haven't seen you a whole week. What's doing? Let me hear what's the latest news. But you have malachim who are escorting you. You're talking to your friend about the latest
It's the same
news.
thing in Pekar Avot. If you're sitting at a table with a bunch of Talmud Chacham, you shouldn't speak, because as soon as you open up your mouth, they'll know how stupid you are.
But these are malachim. They are not going to respond. They're just going to take off. So when you come home finally, and you want to get that bracha, they're not going to be there to give you the bracha. You chase them away because you open your mouth on the way home from shul. So my Rebbe told me, from the time that you leave the shul Friday night, you don't say a word until after Kiddush. You don't say a word on the way home. You remember, you're being escorted by malachim. They're very, very sensitive. You say something, you could say good Shabbos to somebody, Shabbat Shalom, Divrei Torah, that you can talk. But if you say something which is something mundane, politics, business, anything, even if it's kosher or what, but you're now being escorted by malachim, you don't say anything except things which have to do with Shabbos or Kedusha or Torah. That they can take. That's their realm. If you say something off color, they're going to take off and they won't give you the bracha that you want when you walk into the house. They have a kapara. That's what I heard from my Rebbe. And from that time on, I don't talk when I come out of shul Friday night, unless it's Divrei Torah. That's all. Don't talk at all till after Kiddush. Say nothing.
What are all the little children?
What's the difference? Who it is? Everybody knows by now. Abba doesn't talk until after Kiddush. That's all finished. That's it. Very simple. We said a little bit extra. Let me tell you something. I had the schus to tell you about my Rebbe taught me. I taught it to you. Use it. Use it. It's worth $1 million. Worth $1 million.
If you have guests, you can greet your guests.
Good Shabbos. That's all. Shabbat Shalom. That's it. No conversation. Conversation say for afterwards. Till after Kiddush.
What about before Kiddush? You have to bless your children.
Oh, that bracha is okay. That's all right. A bracha okay, but nothing about what's going on in the world. Nothing. That's it. Okay, that's it today, Rabbi. So until next week.
Rabbi, what if